Well, guys, with 2018 rapidly approaching its endpoint, it is now time to do one final catch-up review for the year. Now, obviously, this is not, considering that there were only 4 months, this is not going to be nearly as, long and expansive as the summer one. That one was like an hour, 40 minutes. This one's not going to be as long as that. There's only about, I think 18 to 20 movies to talk about here. But again, similar to summer, there's a lot of movies that I did see in that period where some I just simply didn't get to talk about because I did have a very crazy, last 3 months. The semester was crazy and things like that, so I didn't have time to review some of these movies, or I just simply didn't have a lot to say about them and I held off to talk about them until the catch-up review. Now, you guys may notice some of these films I have actually talked about before. If you follow me on either Stardust or you watch the Jack podcast that I do with Jackson Fulcher and Adam Haskell, you know that I have brought up some of these before. However, I've never really said much about them on this channel, so that'll be your first exposure to them here. But either way, we're just going to jump into it right now, starting off with the first movie. So this first one here, Next Gen, I wasn't really expecting much of anything from. This seemed like it was going to be a very generic animated Netflix film that really didn't do much of anything for me. I figured it was going to be probably on par with Duck Duck Goose, maybe even worse than that. And to be honest, I actually didn't hate this movie. In fact, for a while, I actually was enjoying it. There were definitely things here that I did enjoy about. Right off the bat, the relation between John Krasinski and the main girl in this film, I thought was really good. I liked the relationship they shared. There was something really sweet about it that I definitely really did enjoy. I thought that, characters like, say, David Cross, I thought he did a good job here. Jason Sudeikis as the villain was very, very one note for me. He's about as stereotypical as you can get, where, oh, he's a guy and he has all this cool tech and, the main character's mom is obsessed with him or whatever, but you know he's gonna turn evil. You know how this pretty much is gonna go. It's another one of those where he's a visionary, and like I said, you know pretty much how it's gonna go from there. Michael Peña also has this dog. A lot of people said he worked. I thought he was honestly really annoying. I didn't really understand why he needed to be here. However, that's not actually my biggest problem with this movie, because there are things here, like I said, that I really do enjoy. I like the idea that this robot, some of his memories are taken away and some of them he does still remember. That's a really cool idea, and there is a lot they can do with that emotionally. The climax of this film I actually thought was pretty effective, but my biggest issue with this film, it really all boils down to the main character. I just didn't really feel connected with her. I didn't feel like she had enough going on for me to really feel for her in this situation. I think, a recent film I reviewed, Bumblebee, has a much better main character, and you can understand why she needs this robot, and here, I just did not really care all that much about her. It's not that she was bad. I thought the main actress did a good job, but I just wasn't really a fan of the main character. Constance Wu, like I said, as much as I do like her, she's very much wasted in this film. Like I said, she's really just kind of here to ooh and ah over Jason Sudeikis, and that's really kind of it. C+ for Next Gen. There are definitely things that I enjoyed, but overall, it's very forgettable. It's not really something I'd come back to, and the comparisons to Iron Giant, I totally do understand that. I haven't seen that movie, so I can't say a ton about it. I know, how can I not have seen it? I just simply haven't. I've heard this film is very derivative, though, and if you've seen Iron Giant, you'll probably like it even less. But for me, I thought it was creative, but just not good enough. It was definitely better than I expected, but still nothing to really ring home about. Slice was something I've always been really looking forward to. Ever since I heard that, Chance the Rapper was doing a film for A24 and that it had this really ridiculous concept, I was immediately intrigued. I mean, there were so many possibilities that could have happened here, and this film really disappointed me. This is one of the biggest disappointments of the entire year. Not only is this film really unfunny and is very uninteresting, and it's also really boring, but it doesn't really do anything with its concept. The promise of having this, this pizza delivery guy die and there were like werewolves and vampires involved. That doesn't really happen until the last like 15 minutes of this movie. You really don't get all that really cool sort of lore until the end. And I will say, Chance the Rapper and Zazie Beetz, when they're on screen, the film isn't as boring as it is when they're not on screen. They do bring some light to it. You can tell that they're both having fun. Chance the Rapper actually thought was a pretty good actor here. I'm interested in seeing what he ends up doing in a better project. But overall, this was just really not that great. I really did not care much about the main case that was going on. A lot of the characters are just really boring to me. I didn't really care about the main story. And the climax, like I said, while stuff was finally happening, it's literally the last 15 minutes of the movie, and just overall, it did not do much for me at all. I didn't think the cinematography even was really that great here. It really wasn't that funny. Easily one of the biggest disappointments of the entire year for me. C- for Slice. One of A24's weakest features for sure. All right, time for the controversy to start. I fucking hated this movie. I honestly was going to do a whole rant about it when this came out, but unfortunately, I just never got to do it. But I will say right now that, you know how people were complaining about Mother last year and how, oh, it was just a movie full of metaphors? That's basically me with Assassination Nation. This movie is so enriched in symbolism, and it is so self-indulgent, and it thinks it's so important, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense at all. Now, I will say, there are things I do like about this movie. The four leads, I actually think are all pretty good. The main girl especially in this movie, I can't think of her name right now, but I do think that she could actually be a really great actress if she's in a better project than this. I didn't really like her character at all, but I thought as a actress, she actually gave a pretty strong performance here, and I do definitely want to see more from her. The thing I did like about her character, though, there is an interesting idea that comes up with her where, like, she's someone who likes the idea of nudity, but not in a sexual context. And there's a really great scene between her and I believe her principal where she talks about how we kind of like sexualize nudity and how nudity should be normalized. And I thought that was a really cool idea, but similar to a lot of things in this film, it's one of those things that just doesn't really go anywhere. The film is trying to be so progressive and touch upon these things, yet most of the issues in this movie that these girls are dealing with, even though the whole movie is supposed to be about them being independent and not needing all these men to depend on them, and every single storyline that's going on with them is involving something sexual, and that really is where the biggest problem with this movie comes from, because again, the movie's trying to focus on how these are just people and how we shouldn't target them and things like that, and how there's going to be we're always witch hunting people, and I understand what they're trying to say here. Like, the movie obviously is trying to be a social commentary on how when some sort of situation happens with a woman or something like that, we often do slut shame her and it can ruin her entire life. And again, I wouldn't have a problem if the movie would focus on the girls outside of their sexual desires and outside of their sexual lives, but they really don't. Every single one of these characters, that's really all we get here. Bill Skarsgård is extremely wasted here. Joel McHale also is very much wasted. Bella Thorne is really not that good in this movie at all. She's not in it for that long, but she really isn't good here. But it's especially the third act that really brings this down for me. I mean, eventually, this entire town just starts going after these four girls, and I don't really understand why. Like, this one event happens, and it causes everyone to just be doxxed, and all this personal information starts coming out and things like that, and for some reason, they target just these four girls, and there really is no explanation as to why, except for the fact that they're the main characters of the movie, and we want some sort of momentum there, but that's really it. That's the only reason why they target them. The reasoning for why this happened is one of the dumbest things I have seen all year. The guy who is behind it is a complete idiot. I hated everything about that character. There's a lot of things I really couldn't stand about this movie. It's very self-indulgent. It's very entitled. The movie literally begins with a series of trigger warnings. I'm not even joking. It shows you a series of trigger warnings of things that are going to happen in the movie, so there's no reason to even watch the damn movie because you already know what's going to happen. It's really dumb. I don't know why they felt the need to to do that? Like, why would someone see this movie and not know what they're getting themselves into? I'm pretty sure most people who see this movie knew what they were getting themselves into, and I don't know why they need these like 50,000 trigger warnings, but honestly, this film really pissed me off. I thought it was very annoying. The comedy really did not land at all. There was definitely potential for some of the characters. Like, there is this transgender character, and the stuff they do with her, I do think was a little bit better than some of the other characters, and that's because the other two, Abra and the other chick, have nothing to do in this movie. There's nothing going on with those two at all. Especially the chick with the pink hair, there's nothing going on with her in this movie. But the two that they do stuff with, Hari Neff and the main girl, whose again name is escaping me right now, Odessa Young. There you go, that's her name, Odessa Young. They don't really do anything that interesting with them besides what I already told you, and everything going on with them is from a sexual context, and it just really didn't work. I know there's a lot of people that like this movie, but I really couldn't stand it all. I thought it was very obnoxious. One of the most overrated the entire year for me. I really did not like it at all. It was disappointing because I thought it was going to be shit going into it, and it was basically exactly what I was expecting. I will say visual-wise, this film is really great. It definitely does have a really nice visual style to it. But again, those four performances do make the movie somewhat better. A lot of the acting here really isn't all that bad. There definitely is some interesting stuff here. So while I am ranting a lot, you probably think it's like a D or D minus. No, it is a D plus. It actually is one of the stronger D pluses I've given. But that third act really killed the movie for me. I think this is just a really dumb film overall, and I really couldn't stand it. Like I said, D plus for Assassination Nation. On the flip side, though, Support the Girls is a very good female-centric film. I really love this one a lot. As someone who works in a restaurant, this actually did feel very relatable. Now, I don't work in a restaurant like this where it's very cheap and, you know, you have these girls in these very, like, skimpy outfits. Like, that's not the type of restaurant I work in, but there definitely were a lot of similarities there, and I think they did a good job with that. But what really struck me about this movie is Regina Hall. This is easily one of her best performances to date. I love how nurturing she was to all these girls, how she tries to really, for lack of a better term, support them and try to be that figure in their life for them to depend on emotionally. But there's only so far she can go. You know, there are certain things that she has to do in this movie that she doesn't really want to do, but unfortunately she needs to do. And I think there's a really great scene with her in the car where the whole movie basically takes place over a day, and so much happens to her within those 24 hours. They're just kind of waiting for her to explode, and when she finally does, it is very rewarding, and I really liked what we got with her here. Haley Lou Richardson is also very good. She's someone who, you can tell that she's someone who knows what's going on, but she always seems to be positive about it, and I definitely like that about her character. AJ Mashaka is very good. Really great cast overall. I thought everyone really did a very good job here. My only real complaint with this movie, which, like I said, there really isn't too much, because I think for the most part, this is a really great film that really is shining a light on the workplace and the drama that goes on there, but also the relationship that all these girls have, the community that they've made. I mean, it's really sweet. There's a lot of really great scenes with them, and you can see again that Regina Hall, she doesn't want to have to make some of these choices, but unfortunately she has to, especially by her you know, the hierarchy, who is just constantly barking orders at her and is constantly telling her what to do, and there's so many things that she doesn't want to do, but she always tries to be a deciding factor, and I definitely enjoyed that. But my issue with this movie is that, like I said, most of the film takes place within 24 hours, and the end of this movie, the last like 15 minutes, I really didn't like. I thought it went on way too long. The film was ending on a note that felt very realistic, and I just thought it ended a little too positive. Like I said, it for the most part, it feels like a very realistic depiction of what would happen to this character, and the way things wrapped up, I just didn't really feel like we needed it. It felt like it was ending on the perfect note, and the way it wrapped up, I just wasn't the biggest fan of. But other than that, I really love this one a lot. I think this is a very underrated film that not enough people are talking about. Regina Hall is one of the best performances of her entire career. A minus for Support the Girls. Really enjoyed this one a lot. Daphne and Velma is terrible, but you pretty much already knew that. This film is really obnoxious. I don't really know why it exists. The whole thing is basically to show you how Daphne and Velma met. At least that's what they told us, but they're already best friends, like, when this film begins, so I don't really know what even the point of this film really is. I will say the two actresses were not as terrible as I thought they were going to be here. Especially when it comes to Sarah Jeffrey, who I am usually not a fan of at all. You guys know she was like my least favorite part of Descendants. I really can't stand her at all most of the time. But I actually didn't think she was that bad. The one playing the other, I can't remember if she played Daphne or Velma, but whoever played the other actress, I did not think she really was good at all. The chemistry wasn't really there. The mystery they go on is ridiculous. It's not as terrible as I was expecting, but it still is a pretty bad film that I really didn't like at all. Don't really have too much to say about it other than it sucks. I really couldn't stand it at all, and it's definitely not worth your time. D plus for Daphne and Velma. Really was not a fan of this one at all. 22 July is probably one of the biggest disappointments of the entire year. Now, this is another one that I did talk about on the Jack podcast in length, and you guys may get to hear my thoughts on there, but plain and simple, the biggest problem with this movie is its structure. It starts off and you get the attack 30 minutes in, and normally this sounds like a really good idea. Patriots Day did something very similar where it builds up to it and the rest of the film is the aftermath. The problem with this film is that it's way too long. There are so many things that are very repetitive. There are some things I really do like about this movie. Getting into our central character here and why he kills, why he decided to do this massacre is a really cool idea. There is some interesting stuff there, but also how his lawyer is getting death threats and how he feels a lot of pressure, taking on this case and trying to defend this person that is very obviously mentally ill. Is he really qualified to do something like that? And then when you cut to the other main character in this movie who has been injured and how he is trying to deal with that and how many of the parents are worried that this is going to happen again. All these ideas sound really interesting. The problem is, like I said, the movie is over 2 hours long, and after a while, a lot of this just starts to feel very repetitive. I got very bored during this movie very quickly. I really did not find myself that invested in what was going on. The cinematography obviously is really good. Paul Greengrass, as usual, does a really good job with that, with all the shaky cam and things like that. The attack scene in general definitely is very intense, and it's definitely well done. The ending I actually did like. I like the way the movie did wrap up in the courtroom and things like that, but overall, I just found this film to be really just very middle of the road. I really was not a huge fan of it. I think there was a lot more they could have delved into here. There's a foreign version of this, U July 22, which I actually do want to check out because I heard that film is basically what people wanted this movie to be. So I definitely do want to check that one out. I hope it's better, but really was not that big into this one. C for July, for 22 July, really was not a big fan of this one, was pretty let down by it. Now, this is another one that I wanted to do a full review on, but I just didn't get the chance to. Colette, I really love this one, actually. I think Keira Knightley gives one of the best performances of her entire career. Colette is someone who she starts out and she is, making it's similar to The Wife, where she is doing a lot of the writing, but Dominic West's character, he continues to get all the credit for it, and after a while, this does start to irritate her. It's something that she wants to be more recognized. She wants to get more recognition for it. She wants to start doing her own stuff, but Dominic West is very clearly holding her back. But the way they do it, I actually liked a lot here. They don't try to portray Dominic West as the bad guy in this film. They don't portray him as a piece of shit. No, he's not doing the right thing, but you can understand that he does really care about Colette. He does really like her, and he does, I think, want the best for her, but he's getting a bit carried away with what he's doing, and I don't think he's realizing what he actually is doing to her. And at first, she's okay with it, but, as the film starts to go on, this starts to become more and more of a problem, and I thought that was definitely very well handled. I like the way the film went about it. When the film starts to focus more on her relationship with some of her other lovers in the film. I thought that definitely was very strong. My only real complaint with this movie is that I thought it really took a while to get going. For a while, I actually was kind of bored by it, but once the central story starts and she starts to write as Colette, and you start to get more into what she's really doing, then I thought it got really good. Keira Knightley, like I said, is especially great in this role. I think this is one of the best roles she's ever given, and I really did like this film a lot. B plus for Colette. This is a very good film that I don't think is getting enough talk. Alright, back to unpopular opinion. Old Man the Gun really was not a fan of. There were definitely things to like about this movie, don't get me wrong. Robert Redford is very good here. I don't think he's as amazing as everyone's been saying. Like, honestly, if this wasn't Robert Redford's last performance, I don't think as many people would be praising it, because it really isn't anything that great, but he still does do a very good job. His scenes with the C's Basic are the strongest stuff in the movie. The first scene of this film especially was great. I was like, oh my god, I'm in for something really incredible here, because he starts off and there's a lot of things that there's just off about this guy. He's being way too friendly, but he also has this earpiece and he's dancing around a lot of her questions, and it's like, what's really going on with this guy? And once you get into that story, the film starts to get kind of boring, and especially when we cut to Casey Affleck, I just did not care about what was going on that side of the story. And I'm not saying that you should take that part out, because it is an important part of the story, but I just wish it focused more on Robert Redford and Sissy Spacek. I think those two are the most interesting part of the movie. I think that's really when the film is at its strongest. When it's cutting back to Casey Affleck, I just wasn't as into it. I think they could have done a lot more on that side of things. The film should have been a lot more equal, and I just wasn't really the biggest fan of it. And the ending is another one of those endings where it just kind of made me question what the point of this movie really was. I mean, it's humorous to a degree, but overall, I just wasn't really the biggest fan of it. At first, I enjoyed this film, but upon thinking about it, it's very much left my head. It's really not something that I would recommend all that much. Like I said, Sissy Spacek and Robert Redford work really well together. Casey Affleck is good, but his side of things just isn't really that interesting at all. C plus for Old Man the Gun. Wasn't really a big fan of this one, and I don't really get the praise here. Again, I understand it's Robert Redford's last performance, and he definitely does do a very good job, but aside from that, it is a very forgettable film. Now, this one really disappointed me. Izzy Gets the Fuck Across Town. I mean, I went into this knowing virtually nothing. I didn't watch a single trailer. I stayed away from all the marketing, and I really was rooting for this one. Despite the fact that it wasn't getting the greatest reviews, it has Mackenzie Davis and Carrie Coon. How can this possibly go wrong? Well, that's because of the script that these two are saddled with. Now, performance-wise, everyone's really good here. Everyone does do a fairly good job in this film. That's not the problem with this film. The problem with this film is the script that these characters are set with. I mean, Izzy in particular is one of the most obnoxious and unlikable characters of the entire year. She treats virtually everyone like shit. She's hung up over this one guy that she can't seem to get over. She's constantly just kicking people out, and I just really couldn't stand her at all. And the arc that she goes through especially is terrible. I really could not stand where her character ended up going. The third act of this movie in particular is baffling. I don't know why they took it in this direction, but they tried to end the film on a so-called positive note, and it's like, no. Like, once you get more into the guy that she's actually pursuing, he's a douchebag too. Like, he's just as bad as her. The guy that she's with, he's a prick. And you're like, why do you even care about this guy all that much? Carrie Coon, for what she's in, is really great, but she's not in the movie really that much at all. There's a really good scene between them where they're singing together, and I enjoyed that. There was some fun stuff with Lakeith Stanfield. I enjoyed Aaliyah Sawkat, but most of the best parts of this movie are characters that are barely in it, and the ones that we have that we're focusing on the most are just really awful individuals that I really couldn't stand at all. The comedy here really did not work for me. I was very bored by it. I didn't particularly hate this movie, but I just really couldn't stand it at all. Mackenzie Davis, like I said, she does a good job here, and that really is the thing that's keeping me from hating this movie, but I really was not a fan of it. C minus for Izzy Gets the Fuck Across Town. This is easily one of the biggest disappointments of the entire year. All right, now this one is likely going to be the biggest unpopular opinion of all of these films. I went into this one really expecting a lot, and maybe that's why Can You Ever Forgive Me really let me down here. Because look, I will say Melissa McCarthy is great here. I can totally understand the praise she's getting. She completely transforms herself into Lee Israel. She does a very good job with that role. The scenes between her and Richard E. Grant are really great. The two of them work very well together. But my problem with this movie is at first, I was really enjoying it. I like the setup that, she was able to get away with this stuff for a very long time. And she was able to, she was able to forge all these letters and things like that. But now she's getting caught and no one really wants to purchase things from her anymore. And I think it was a really cool idea overall that she was someone who, she was writing a bunch of stuff, but unfortunately now nobody really wants to purchase anything from her. So she starts like forging all these letters. The problem is the movie starts to get very repetitive very fast. I mean, the rest of the movie is basically she forges a letter, something goes wrong, she goes to a person and apologizes. She then writes a letter again, something goes wrong, and she then goes to the person and apologizes and admits that it was forged. And it's just rinse and repeat in that way. And it isn't very engaging. I really was not that into this film. I thought cinematography-wise, this film was really well done. But to me, I just did not feel like we got enough with Lee Israel as a character. They really only focus on her forging these letters, and anything else they kind of brush over. And I especially want to know more about her and her, her girlfriend that we hear about throughout the movie. We hear about her in passing, but we really only see her once in this movie, and then it doesn't really come up again. And I kept waiting for them to do something with that, but they don't. And I was just kind of sitting there like, what was really the point of that? Why'd they even bring that up? And there was so many things I wish we could have gotten more from this character. There's a really great scene between her and Richard E. Grant where they talk about how much she's aging and things like that. And I thought that was a very effective scene. But just overall, I just really wanted a lot more from it. Again, it's a film that I can understand why people are enjoying it. I can understand if this is on your best of the year list, cool. I get it. I get why you really do enjoy it. But just for me, I found this to be very underwhelming, and I just wasn't really the biggest fan. Maybe because of the endless praise and things like that. Maybe that's why it really did let me down here. But overall, I wasn't a really big fan. Really good score, though, also. I will say that the score of this film I definitely enjoyed a lot. But just overall, it's a film that I want a lot more from. C for Can You Ever Forgive Me. I really love Melissa McCarthy in this film, but other than that, I just wasn't as big of a fan of it. Richard E. Grant, like I said, also was really good, but just overall, I wasn't really as big as a fan as I really wanted to be. I was honestly pretty let down by it. Alright, I guarantee most of you have not heard about this film. If you did, it's because you watched my movie preview, and honestly, from a technical standpoint, Airstrike is terrible. It's one of the worst films of the entire year, but I couldn't help but just love everything about this film. I mean, when you recognize what this film is, this was a Japanese film that was like, I think, 2 hours long, and somehow it got completely cut up to shreds, and, in the editing room, somehow they got fucked over, and the film is only now 90 minutes, and basically this entire film is like crazy action sequence and then random dialogue scene, and it is absolutely hilarious to witness. Some of the worst dubbing I've ever seen, especially on this one woman. Holy shit, is it bad. Bruce Willis actually wasn't as terrible as I thought he would be. He actually did seem like he was kind of caring in this movie. There's a extremely hilarious scene with him and his birthday that I don't really want to get too much into. Look, I will say this. If you watch this film on your own, you're probably going to hate it. But if you're like me and you watch it with a bunch of friends, you'll have a great time just making fun of it. This is a great film to just make fun of. It's one of my biggest guilty pleasures of the entire year. I recognize it's really bad. Adrian Brody, by the way, is like not really in this at all. I also don't know why Rumor Willis was credited because she never really showed up in this movie. Like, I was watching this with my friend and we're like, when's Rumor Willis gonna pop up? And she never did, and I don't know why, but overall, this is a really dumb film. The Action sequences are especially terrible. There's a lot of really unintentionally funny stuff though, and for me, it's one of the biggest guilty pleasures of the entire year. Objectively, it's an F, but because the guilty pleasure, it is a C, and yeah, so not something I necessarily recommend unless you're with a group of friends, but it definitely is one of my biggest guilty pleasures of this entire year for sure. Oh my god, I fucking hated this thing. Look, I intentionally skipped this one in theaters because I didn't want to give it any time whatsoever. It's Tyler Perry. You guys know how much I can't stand him. But I was holding out just the littlest ounce of hope because it wasn't a Medea movie. It wasn't like Acrimony where it was this, very over-the-top drama. So I was hoping that this could at least be just a really mediocre film. And this is easily one of my least favorite movies of the entire year. I mean, not only is this film so obnoxious, which, let me just say right now, I've been very back and forth with Tiffany Haddish, but I swear to God, if she ever gets a role like this again, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do. This role is so awful. The whole movie is just her screaming things. Any time that she popped up, the movie gets so much worse. She's just there to just basically every single guy she encounters in this movie, she wants to have sex with. She wants to be with them in a sexual manner. She's just constantly yelling about everything, and it's not funny. There's nothing funny about her in this movie, and it's mainly because Tyler Perry didn't even really give her a script. He just kind of had her ad-lib, and it's one of those instances where there are some comedians where they can ad-lib and it works really well. Tiffany Haddish is not one of those people. I am convinced that when you give Tiffany Haddish a good script, she can be really good, but she is not good when she has no material to work with. I mean, I'm hoping, that's why I liked her in Night School, because she was playing a very different character, and in Girls Trip, it was because of the really great script that she had. Here, though, she really doesn't have anything to do, and she's just very annoying and over the top, and I really couldn't stand her. But even with that, the other characters aren't really likable either. Tika Sumpter is a very poor lead character. She treats basically every single character, this one guy that she very obviously is going to get with, she treats him like shit throughout the movie, and we don't know why. Whoopi Goldberg is completely wasted in this thing. She has maybe one or two really good scenes, but other than that, she's very much wasted. I didn't even really feel like she wanted to be here. It felt like she was very just kind of, she was just kind of going through the motions, and I wasn't really a fan of her. I will say there are two good performances in this movie. Omari Hardwick Jr. and Amber Riley. I thought both of them did do a good job here. Amber Riley seemed like she wanted to be here. She was having a good time. She was doing the best with what she could do. And Omari Hardwick Jr., he's just a very charismatic and fun guy to watch, and you can see why he wants, you can see why, why Tika Sumpter would like him and things like that. But again, you're kind of like, why would you fall for someone like Tika Sumpter? She doesn't like, she's not treating you nicely. Why are you doing this to her? Just overall, this movie really pissed me off. The ending especially, it's one of those movies where right when it seems like everything is going to wrap up, the film still has 20 minutes left, and I don't really know why. It doesn't really have much of a plot. The catfish thing is there, but there's also 50 other things. There's also these all kinds of other subplots going on. Just overall, I could not stand this film at all. I thought it was extremely obnoxious and annoying. It's one of the worst films of the entire year. Big D- for this film. Like I said, aside from those two positives, I really hated this one a lot. Now, I'm going to be honest, I was planning on doing a very long review for this one, but unfortunately, I just never got around to it, so it got stuck in this catch-up review, and it's unfortunate because out of all the films I'm talking about, this is the one where I probably have the most to say for the other, well, minus one other film that we'll get to a little bit later, but in terms of really great films, this is the one I have the most to say. I was very excited for The Other Side of the Wind. Orson Welles, he's one of the greatest filmmakers out there, between Sis and Kane and everything, but, one of the things that I really do encourage when you watch this film is to watch the documentary They'll Love Me When I'm Dead right after, because while this is a really great film, I think that film really gives you a bigger understanding of what this film is really supposed to be. Essentially, Wells made this film because everyone saw Citizen Kane and nobody thought he'd be able to top that. But he wasn't actually a fan of that film. He liked it, but he didn't think it was his masterpiece. He wanted this film to very much be his masterpiece. And while it isn't that, you can see how much work was put into this. I mean, he worked so painstakingly hard, and you definitely do see that here. There's so much to love about this movie. The main character especially, I mean, this is someone who, it's just really tragic. He's someone who you can tell he's trying to work on this film and everything is just going so terribly for him. But he's also someone that, similar to Orson Welles, a lot of people are very much dismissing. They're like, whatever happened to this guy? Why isn't he making movies anymore? There's allegations of him possibly being gay and he doesn't want that out there. There's all kinds of bad publicity, and it's just a really fascinating concept overall. I really like where they end up going. John Huston is pitch perfect in this role. I love what he did here. And I can understand if some people don't like this film because of how broken it is of a narrative, but that's kind of what Orson Welles was trying to do. He was simultaneously trying to tell this story, but also throw in this avant-garde movie that the fictional director is trying to make, and that part of the movie is really great. I really loved the stuff that was going on there. I thought it was a really cool idea. The main actress, Uja Kodor, I think that's how you pronounce it, Ojo Kodor, she does a very good job in this role. She never has a single line of dialogue, but she's very effective. I really like the stuff we got with her. There's a lot of very interesting conversations in this film. My only real complaint with it is that the film does feel a little bit broken. It feels like if Welles was alive, maybe he could have repaired some things a little bit, and maybe he could have, moved some things around, and I think there just could have been a little bit more going on narratively, but overall, this is a fantastic film. It's a very good way for him to go out. Like I said, I very much recommend you watch They'll Love Me When I'm Dead, because it very much gets into a lot of the hows and whys of how this movie came to be, what he was really trying to accomplish. I think it's a really great companion piece to this film, but on its own, this is still a really great film. It's one that I really enjoyed watching, and definitely one that I'd recommend. Big A- for The Other Side of the Wind. This is another one that I actually started reviewing, but I just never finished for some reason, and that's Hearts Beat Loud. This is the definition of a very positive music film. Now, a lot of people have said this is like the Sing Street of this year, and I would actually very much compare it to that. I think this film has a lot of comparisons in the sense where it's very positive, it's very fun. It doesn't have the very deep characterization that that film did, but what this film does a really good job with is it has two really great central performances from both Nick Offerman and Kiersey Clemons. Both of them are really great here. I like getting into their relationship and how it's a bit strained, and how Offerman will try to use music as a way to get to know his daughter more. For example, she has a lesbian girlfriend in this movie, and he tries to get more into that relationship, and I definitely enjoyed that here. The music here is really great. I found myself pretty much loving every song in this film. I thought the songs were very good. Toni Collette gives another really good performance. Nothing on the level like Hereditary or anything, but I definitely really did like her here. It's very fun. Like I said, the chemistry between these two is really great, and the central narrative as well, I thought was really well done. The main story here is that Offerman, it's one of those stories where, he just doesn't really want to let her go. He wants to coddle her, he wants to still have her in his life, but she wants to venture elsewhere. She's trying to go, move in with her girlfriend, she's trying to go to college, and he is very, you can tell, not especially excited about that, because his little girl is leaving, and he doesn't really want to get rid of her, so he keeps finding reasons for them to stay, by making this band go, which is literally called We're Not a Band, which I think is hilarious. But I thought that central narrative was really good. I thought it was definitely a really good story overall. My really only complaint with it is the ending of the movie did not work for me. It did not seem like that's where the film was really going. Ted Danson is not really in this movie all that much, and he seemed to serve a bigger purpose than the film initially gave him. I didn't feel like we got enough with his character, and like I said, the way the movie wraps up, it just did not feel very natural to me. There were a few characters that I thought were a bit underused, but other than that, I had a lot of fun with this film. I think it's one of the most enjoyable films of the entire year. Definitely A- for this one. Very good film overall. This is another one that is extremely disappointing. There's a lot to enjoy about the frontrunner from performance-wise. I mean, Hugh Jackman does do a very good job here. I don't think this is on the level of, say, Logan or even The Greatest Showman last year. I thought he put more effort into that, but he still does a good job as Gary Hart. You know, he does still give a really good performance. Vera Farmiga is very good here. The whole cast all does a very good job in this film. But my issue with the movie is that it just feels very surface level. There's a lot of things that it feels like we could have dived into more. The film is very Gary-centric, and the way the film wraps up, it just isn't very satisfying. It never really felt like we got that focus on him that we really needed. They focused so much on this one incident that happened, and they don't really get to show much of the other side of the story, especially when it comes to Sarah Paxton, because I actually found her to be potentially the most interesting character of the entire movie. There's a lot of interesting stuff with her, how, oh, her life's never going to be the same. You know, she's trying to be like a professional actress, and they talk about how she's never going to get a role in anything now because of this affair, and I thought that was a really cool idea. You know, there's a relation that starts between her and Molly Ephraim's character, and that doesn't really go anywhere. You're kind of just there, like, why they even try to do that? Like, what was the point of them doing that? There's a good scene there where you see more of Donna Rice and how she really feels about this whole thing. And like I said, there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but they very quickly gloss over it. Also, Vera Farmiga is completely wasted in this film. Aside from two scenes that she has, they don't really dive into her at all. I mean, her response to this whole thing, it's just very casual, and it just didn't feel very real in that sense. J.K. Simmons does have a really good scene, but that's really the thing with this movie. There are good scenes, but it doesn't make a good movie. There's a lot of characters here at the end of the day where I'm like, why are we focused on them? Marmaduke Athy's character especially, I really don't know what the point of him was. The way the movie ends is very unsatisfying, and I understand this was like a very big scandal, but it just did not really feel like something that we needed to cover as a movie. I think this could be an interesting story, but the way it was done here, it just did not really work for me. C- for the frontrunner. I was honestly pretty bored with this one. Aside from some things, like I said, with Sarah Paxton's character, I really was not into this at all, and especially before the election, I thought it was definitely very boring. But then once the scandal actually comes up, then I was actually really interested in seeing where it was going to go, and it just didn't really go much of anywhere for me. Oh, look at that. It's another day. Well, I guess me saying that this wasn't going to take as much time, not true, because it took me 2 days to actually finish this one. But let's keep going. The Princess Switch is terrible, but you already knew that. It's every bit as bad as everyone has been saying. Vanessa Hudgens, actually, I didn't think was that bad here. She was the only person who seemed like she was kind of, you know, putting some effort into this. Whenever she was on the screen, the film wasn't as unbearable as it is. Everyone else here, no. No, everyone else here is pretty terrible, honestly. The main love interests, both of them, are so bland. There's really nothing to them, especially the British dude that, you know, one of the Hudgens is with. I really couldn't stand him at all. I thought that the little girl in this movie seemed so disinterested. I was watching this with my friend, and I honestly think that that could have been, like, say, like, the director or producer's kid, and they were just so bored and they didn't want to be with it. Just put them in the movie, and you can just tell every single line she says, she seems so bored. The whole movie, though, overall, it's so cliche. You've seen this done 1,000 times before. It's something ripped out of, like, the Hallmark Channel. I don't even know why this is on Netflix, honestly. It felt like something that was rejected off the Hallmark Channel, and that very much surprised me. There's literally a scene in this movie where the two of them are watching Netflix, and they catch a scene from A Christmas Prince, and they talk about how great of a movie it is. So, yeah, this just kind of shows you how shallow and corporate Netflix has really become. Like I said, it's not funny at all. It's so predictable. There are so many things that don't go anywhere. For example, there's this old guy that keeps following around certain characters, and you keep thinking that he's going to serve some sort of larger purpose in the film. Never happens. There's never a point where you're like, okay, now I understand why they focused on this character so much. It never happens here. It doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. The ending is so predictable, and it also doesn't make any sense. There's so many things I couldn't stand about this movie. Also, there's this guard that keeps following around Hudgens and the rich dude, and he's so creepy. Like, every time they showed him, I thought he was gonna be like a serial killer or something, because he's terrifying to look at. There's just a lot to really hate about this film. I really couldn't stand it at all. There's even a montage where there's like 30 seconds of like her just walking, and it's like, why even do that as a montage? It doesn't really make any sense. The cinematography here is really bad. Just everything about this film is just really cheap. It was clearly just something they put onto Netflix because they needed a Christmas movie, and there you go. It's really bad. I couldn't stand it at all. D for The Princess Switch. It's not one of the worst of the year, but it's definitely a film I really couldn't stand. Instant Family is really good. I really don't think this film is getting enough attention. It just kind of like came into theaters and not enough people are talking about it. And it's a shame because I actually think this is a really well done film. Not only is this film really funny and it has some really great performances across the board. Everyone here pretty much I think is really great. You know, Wahlberg. Rose Byrne is a huge standout here. And Isabelle Monet, I mean, she continues, Monet or Monet, I never know how to pronounce her last name. She continues to impress me in pretty much everything she does. This is maybe her strongest performance yet. I really liked what she did here. I thought the other kids, they were a little bit underdeveloped, but I thought that they still were really good here. Tig Notaro, Octavia Spencer, really good. Everyone really does a very good job in this film. But the thing that this does have above Daddy's Home and Daddy's Home 2, which you guys know I was a fan of Daddy's Home 2, this film has a much bigger sort of authenticity to it because it is based on Sean Anders' true life. You can tell this was kind of like his passion project. It was something he's probably had in the works for a while, and it very much does show here. He put a lot of passion into it. There's a lot of great emotional core to it, and I definitely really enjoyed it. There's a really great scene with these two where they're talking to Isabelle Moner on a swing and kind of, in this house or whatever, and you can tell that she, the other two kids, they're warming up nicely to Wahlberg and Byrne, but she is a bit harder of a time, really adjusting to them being her foster parents because she does have this connection to her mother that the other two kids didn't have. And I thought that was very effective. I really liked the story that they told with her. I thought they did a good job of making this character, really understanding this character. She could have come across as really unlikable and annoying, but they do a good enough job of showing, okay, this is why she is like this. And I definitely enjoyed that overall. My really only complaint with it is like I said, the other two kids in the movie, there's not really much to them. They're pretty much just there. One of them constantly keeps getting hurt, and it's funny. I definitely enjoyed the gag there, but I just kind of want a little bit more there. And then the little girl especially, there's really nothing to her at all, except for the fact that she wants to eat potato chips with everything, but that's kind of it. And then my only other flaw is that there's this one subplot with Isabelle Moner's character, who, like I said, I really liked her a lot for the most part, but this one subplot they do with her, I don't really know why it was needed. I don't think they really need to do it. Now, they do eventually justify it in the third act of the movie, but I just did not really understand why they need to go where they did with it. Overall, this is just a really enjoyable film. I thought it was very well done. It had a lot more heart than I was expecting. Wahlberg and Byrne both do a very good job here. B+ for Instant Family. Like I said, don't think this is getting enough attention. If it's still in your theaters and you haven't seen it, definitely check it out because I think it is actually pretty great. Happy as Lazzaro definitely has a lot of great ideas behind it. I really like the main actor here. I think he does a very good job of portraying this sort of larger-than-life character. He's someone who, even though constantly people are, just barking orders at him, and he basically has to do everything in this village, he remains very positive. He always seems to have this very positive can-do attitude, and it is infectious, and the main actor here does a very good job with that, and I definitely did enjoy the Lazaro character, and his relationship, with the other character here, whose name is escaping me, I thought also was very strong. I definitely did enjoy it, but that's where my main flaw comes in with this movie, because while I enjoyed that overall friendship, it is basically the driving force of this entire movie, and I don't think we got enough time with them. We get maybe one or two scenes exploring their friendship, and we're expected to care after that, and I just don't think there was enough time there, and that is because the director here wants to spend a good majority of the time, talking about this village and how illegal what's really going on is. I mean, these guys are underpaid. In fact, they don't get paid at all, and they're just constantly working. And there's this one, it's all ran by like this one woman who is just doesn't really care. You can tell that she is very much an aristocrat. She is of much more wealthy stature than them, and she could very well pay them. She just simply chooses not to. And I do think this is an interesting idea. My problem with the movie is that I like that the director wanted to zero in on her country and kind of show how it became overwrought, and it became a bit run down. I definitely like her exploring that, but the characters there populating this storyline are not really explored upon. I felt they were very one note. The film is very Lazaro-centric, and I feel like if you wanted to explore that topic, you should have given more to these characters, because I just didn't really have much of a reason to care. And I will say, though, the thing I do like about this film is that something you should know going into is that it does take a drastic shift in the second act of this film. Most films have 3 acts. This film very distinctly has 2 acts, and it takes a hard left turn in the second act, and that's where the film kind of lost me. I'm not entirely sure if it worked as well as they wanted it to. The ending was effective. I like the way it was done, but it was one of those things where as it was wrapping up, it became really interesting, and then just kind of ended, and I just wanted a little bit more there. Overall, I thought this film was decent. There are definitely a lot of things to like about it. The cinematography here is absolutely gorgeous. They're some of the best cinematography, I think, of the entire year. I really loved it a lot. There's some really great lines there. The Lazaro character is very good. It is fun at points, and it definitely does have a good message, but I just think overall, it's crammed with a few too many ideas. There are a few things that I think they could have explored more, and for a movie that's over 2 hours, it's kind of inexcusable that that main friendship wasn't dived into more, because that really is supposed to be, like I said, the driving force of the entire movie, and it just didn't really feel that way to me. B minus for this film. I know it seems like I know it seems like I'm complaining a lot, and maybe you thought it'd be lower, but I definitely did enjoy it. I just really wanted a lot more from it overall. However, a Netflix film that actually did really work for me is The Christmas Chronicles. I really enjoyed this one a lot. This is the first Netflix Christmas film that's actually really good. I actually really enjoy this film. Not only is this film telling a really interesting story, this idea that, like, what if everything you knew about Santa Claus was wrong? He doesn't say ho ho ho. He's not as fat as he's presumed to be. He doesn't do all the certain things that we've come to know with that character. That does not apply to Russell's incarnation of him here, and I thought that was a really cool idea. I actually really like that. I like his bonding with him and Darby Camp. I thought they worked very good, and they do a good job with getting you to care about these two kids before they meet Santa Claus. Obviously they're going through a rough time because their father has died, and it's kind of put a strain on their relationship. I will say, Judah Lewis in this film really impressed me. I hated him in The Babysitter last year. I thought he was really annoying. This is leagues above that performance. I really like what he did here. Like I said, Darby Camp, again, another really great performance after Benji. I really am liking what I'm seeing from her. There's a lot of fun scenes in this film. There's also a really good story between Santa Claus and this one cop. Now, eventually that the cop is going to come around, and he's going to realize that he is Santa Claus, but the way that he convinces him into doing so, I actually thought was really good. I thought it was actually a really nice subplot, and I like what they did there. The film's very entertaining. It reminded me a lot of something I'd see on, say, Disney Channel when I was a kid, and that's a compliment. That's not a bad thing. Like, it seems like something ripped out of the 90s, and those are like where I think all the best Christmas films come from, like the Home Alones and the Santa Claus and things like that. Those are all from the 90s, and this very much felt like it was ripped from that time period. I really enjoyed this a lot. I think this is a very charming and fun film. I think definitely if you want a really good Christmas movie, this is definitely one to check out. There's other ones like Princess Switch, which I'm not gonna talk about because they're not worth my time. I did actually see that one, but I just don't really have anything to say about that one. This is definitely the Christmas film to watch out of all the ones that Netflix has released. Strong B for the Christmas Chronicles. Really enjoyed this one a lot. Alright, I'm just going to get this one out of the way. I was actually planning on doing a huge rant for this movie because of how much I hated it, but I figured, it's not really worth my time because it is just so unnecessary, but I'll just say right now, Life Size 2 is one of the worst movies of the entire year. I mean, there's really nothing redeeming about this movie. The whole reason I watched it is because my friend showed me the poster and I thought it looked hilarious, and I thought, all right, we gotta like rabbit a double feature of this. So we did that, and it was a terrible mistake because this is just an awful film. There's nothing to like about this, and here's the thing. I've seen both of these. The first one is bad. It really is. It's really bad, but it does have a heart. It attempts to have some kind of message in there. Even though it goes about that message in entirely the wrong way, it at least tries to have a heart. It at least tries to do something. This film is so shallow and so self-entitled, and it doesn't feel like it even knows what its source material is from. I mean, right from the start, this feels like a completely different type of franchise. It is way more raunchier. It is way more disgusting. The first scene is literally our main character just drunk, and she's like ranting about this like company or whatever. The main actress, let me just say, is horrifically bad. I could not stand her in this movie. And it's not a love to hate sort of thing. You just fucking hate this character. Like, when she votes for the doll to be discontinued, you're not like, all right, I can understand that. Like, you're very much against her, and when people are calling her out for it, you're pretty much on their side, and that's not how it's supposed to be at all. But the film gets so much worse once Tyra Banks comes in. Oh my god. I haven't said this before, but Tyra Banks cannot act to save her life. I could not stand her in this movie. She was so annoying, even more so than the first one. At least in the first one, they try to give her a little bit of substance. She's just a fucking cartoon here. There's really no other way to say it. She's spouting catchphrases. She's misreading everything. Literally, the first scene of them is Tyra Banks asking if they slept together, which makes the lead actress think that she means that they had sex, and it's just no, I don't want to think about that. There's just a lot to hate about this movie. There's so many raunchy jokes. There's a whole scene with her talking to the waitress in a, in a certain manner, and he thinks she wants to give him, like, a waiter, and, he thinks she wants to give him, like, sexual favors. There's this really weird romance with her that they throw in this one, where the first one, they had the romance between her and the dad, and that wasn't very good, but that's nothing compared to this one. This one, she literally goes out of her way to meet with this guy, and the way it ends is one of the most baffling things I've seen all year. It's supposed to be a happy ending, and it is honestly a horror movie. Like, this is a horror movie to its core. Also, I didn't even like the original doll song, the original theme song for even the original, but what they do to it here is deplorable. It is, I mean, if anyone was a fan of that song, you're gonna be so upset with what they did with it here. It was honestly unwatchable garbage. There's nothing to like about this movie. They try so hard to tug at the heartstrings with this main character in like the second act of this movie, and you really don't know why. There's no reason to care about her. Her friends are just complete stereotypes. You have like her gay best friend, you have this little girl, they're all just really annoying. I couldn't stand anything about this movie. It has one of the worst endings the entire year. Big fat F for Life Size 2. I could not find anything redeeming about this movie. I know I'm going into a full-on rant, but just so you guys know, it will be on my worst list. It'll be pretty high up there, so yeah, don't see this. It's garbage, and I don't know why I recommended it. Mowgli Legends of the Jungle is probably one of the most disappointing movies of the entire year. I really was hoping that this could be something great. I knew, when it wasn't coming to theaters, I thought that was because the fact that it was coming alongside, Halloween and, The Hate U Give and things like that, so and I thought for sure that's why they, removed it from theaters. But after seeing it, honestly, I could have waited a year because there wasn't really much of anything to ring home about here. Now, I will say, all the acting here is really good. Rohan Chand is a very good Mowgli. He really captures that innocence and that free spirit side of him, but also the more, he also, I think, represents that heroic side of Mowgli that he eventually does blossom into, and I think he did that quite nicely. Andy Serkis is a really good Baloo. Christian Bale's a very good Bagheera. I really liked Kate Blanchett. I thought Benedict Cumberbatch was a fantastic Shere Khan. I loved what he did here. My problem with the movie, though, is that it, one, took a long time to get going. For the first half, I was honestly kind of bored. It wasn't really, I'd say, till like 40 minutes in until I really started to get into this thing. But for a while, I just found it really boring. It just wasn't really interesting me all that much. A lot of the stuff that is new, they just don't do nearly enough with. Like, Baloo here is a completely different Baloo than what you've seen. He's much more of a drill sergeant. He barks orders to people, and there could have been some really great stuff they do with that, but they didn't really do much of anything with that concept, and it sucks because Andy Serkis was clearly doing a really good job there, and he was definitely into the role, and I wish he would have done more there. I thought, like I said, I thought they definitely hone in more on the relation between Bagheera and Mowgli. That's really is the central relationship here. It's not so much Baloo and Mowgli, it's Bagheera and Mowgli, and it does work. Those two do have good scenes together, but ultimately, this was just a big missed opportunity, and when things do eventually start to happen in the third act, when Mowgli goes to the man village for a while, it just feels like there wasn't enough time spent there, definitely. It gets very short-changed. There's a very quick, like, maybe 10-minute montage before he ventures back into the jungle, and it just feels like such a wasted opportunity. Frida Pinto, by the way, completely wasted here. I don't recall her having a single line of dialogue. She's supposed to be this, like, maternal figure to Mowgli, and you don't get that sense at all because everything is conveyed through a montage. Matthew Rhys pops up here, and he's obviously good, but he doesn't really have anything to do. And also the cinematography is a little bit lackluster here. I thought that the sets, the jungles, they look great. They definitely do look great, but the motion capture on the animals did not look as smooth as I think it really could have. The mouth movements especially just didn't really work for me. I thought the Disney one did a much better job of conveying that. The Disney one is leagues above this for sure. Overall, this is just a very mediocre film. I just wasn't really into it all that much. I found it to be pretty boring. It does get a little bit better around the second half, but even at that, like, there's only, like, 30 minutes of movie left, so at that point you've probably already checked out of it, and it's definitely not something you really need to see. It sucks because it is Andy Serkis, who I usually really do admire, but this just kind of felt very uninspired to me. I wasn't really a big fan of it. C for Mowgli Legends of the Jungle. Didn't hate it, but definitely could have been a lot better. Tyrell, this one I really wasn't that interested in. If you guys watch the movie preview, it kind of looked like a message movie, and it's not so much that. It definitely is trying to convey a message. I just don't really know what it is, and that really is my biggest problem with Tyrell, is that it felt like there are some pieces here. There are some things that they can do, but it didn't really seem like they knew what they really were trying to say here. What are they actually trying to convey in this movie? Because you have this guy, and sure, he's the only black guy in this group of friends, so obviously he feels a bit left out, but you don't really get the sense that these guys are against him. In fact, they're treating him like one of their own. You know, he's the one who is actively not wanting to participate in their ridiculousness and their games. So right off the bat, it's very hard to connect to Tyler. You don't really understand, like, what he's really dealing with here. Also, I didn't really understand that either. Like, why is it such a big deal? They call him Tyrell instead of Tyler. I didn't really understand that. None of the guys here stuck out to me. They all were very just... They're just bros, basically. Like, that's all they are. They're just the definition of a bro. They like to shout a lot. They say a lot of sexual things. You know, they participate in some really dumb stuff, and that's kind of all they do. I will say when Michael Cera got in there, it got a little bit better. But other than that, I just didn't really care about really any of them. Jason Mitchell does give a really good performance here as usual, and I thought Christopher Abbott was pretty good, but overall, this film just didn't really do much of anything for me, and the way it ends especially, it's one of those movies where you keep waiting for something to happen. You keep waiting for some sort of revelation to appear, because obviously there's this message that they're trying to convey, and you can't really tell what it is, and you know, you're just kind of waiting for something to happen. The way the movie ends, I genuinely don't understand what the point of it was. I really don't get what they were trying to do. There is some good cinematography here. The guys overall do work well together, but just for the most part, I was really not that into this. I really was trying to find things to like about, and again, there were definitely things I did enjoy about it. I do think there are definitely some good ideas here, but just overall, I really did not care all that much about this movie. I've honestly kind of forgotten about it. It's definitely watchable. Like, it's a film that I think you can enjoy, but if you're looking for something deeper, you're really gonna have to look very deep into it, because I personally couldn't really find anything. Maybe it's just because I wasn't all that into it, but I really couldn't find what they were really trying to say here. C+ for Tyrell. Enjoyable, but definitely not something that I would recommend. I wasn't really the biggest fan of this one. Alright, so this last one I'm going to be talking about, Never Going Back, I actually just finished watching this like a couple minutes ago, and I wasn't initially going to put it in here, but honestly, I don't really have a lot to say about this film. I actually was really looking forward to it, one, because it's the first movie I'm seeing Kyle Mooney in after Brigsby Bear, and, you know, obviously I knew it wasn't going to be on that level, because anything following Brigsby Bear is going to be disappointing, because, you know, Brigsby Bear was just such a lightning in a bottle sort of scenario, so I didn't think it was going to be on that level, but this film couldn't even reach to be, you know, at least somewhat fun. Like, I really wanted a fun film here, and that's not what we're left with. What I was left was a film that was actually really annoying. Now, right off the bat, the two actresses here are good. Maya Mitchell and Camilla Morone, they do have good chemistry. Camilla Morone gives a much better performance here than Death Wish for sure, and they definitely do have good chemistry and they work well together. But for anyone that says this movie's a coming-of-age film, I really don't know what you're talking about. Because to me, these characters didn't evolve at all. There was nothing different about them. They're the same exact individuals they were in the beginning of the movie than they were at the end. They're two girls who are working as waitresses. They dropped out of high school and now they're working as waitresses, and they want to go to a beach and they need money to go to said beach. And that's it. That's literally all we're dealing with here. There's nothing else really going on with their characters. We get a little bit into Camilla Morone, but nothing for Maya Mitchell. So there really isn't much of a story there. The film also really isn't funny at all. A lot of the time I really wasn't laughing, except when two characters came on screen. Kyle Mooney is very funny here. He definitely has a lot of funny stuff. At first I was a little bit disappointed, but they definitely give him a lot of fun stuff in the third act. And this older guy that keeps popping up, I don't know the name of him, but whenever he popped up, I was in stitches. I thought he was absolutely hilarious, and I wish we got more of them, honestly, because they were the best parts of this movie for me. Everyone else also just really obnoxious and annoying, and I really couldn't stand them. They're basically just stereotypes in this movie. It's also very much a gag after gag film, and those are kind of movies that sometimes can work, but here it really didn't work at all because, again, nothing that was being said or done was really funny or even somewhat compelling. The music choices are also very strange. The film has a very disjointed type of soundtrack, and the cinematography here really isn't that good at all. It utilized like a lot of cross dissolves and things like that, which I don't think really works, and the pacing of this film is pretty much all over the place. The movie is not even an hour and 30 minutes, and it was really dragging for me. I was honestly pretty bored throughout a lot of it. Overall, it's just a very disappointing movie. I really don't know why A24 decided to do this one. It does not really seem like something they do usually. I mean, I know there are people that enjoyed it, but I just didn't really find it funny at all. I thought the two characters, there were just really nothing to them. I was kind of just indifferent to them. Like, I didn't hate them as people, but I just kind of was indifferent to them because I had no reason to care about them. The story overall is extremely predictable. There are some moments that are just absolutely disgusting. It seemed like one of those movies where they were just trying to push the boundaries, like other films I talked about, like Assassination Nation and things like that, where they're just trying to push the boundaries and they're trying to, you know, get to you and elicit this reaction, and it just really didn't work at all. I really hated this one, honestly. If it wasn't for Kyle Moon, the other dude, and the two girls having chemistry, it would have been probably one of the worst movies of the year. But I am going to give this one a D+. Very let down by it, and definitely nothing you need to see. Alright, so with that, guys, we have now made it to the end of this. I know that this was a long video. I know that I said it wasn't going to take as long, but it did, and you know, if you guys are still sticking with me after this, let me know what you guys thought of any of these films. Love to hear your thoughts. And then we still do have quite a lot of movie reviews to do for the rest of the year. But I just figured, you know, I wanted to do this catch-up review because there were a bunch of movies that I knew I wasn't going to get to review, and I wanted to do one last one. I did one last year, figured I'd do one this year. But that's really it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of any of these movies. Love to hear your thoughts on them. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.